Have you ever used Blights in your D&D game? This Monster Monday, we're going over how you can use these creatures to impact your 5e game. Let's get into it. Blights are creatures with a tree made out of vampiric power as their baby daddy, and they feel compelled to align their goals with the will of the creature that came before them. That includes conquering lands, destroying civilizations, finding ancient artifacts, and carrying on the ancient creature's dark legacy. These creatures are made of twigs, vines, needles, and more, and typically take on a humanoid form, but have the crazy ability to blend in with the surroundings that more befit the type of Blight that they are, which allows even the most skilled adventurers to lose sight of them with ease. While typically being used en masse for fighting, Blights can be used for far more than your standard encounter, and can set the stage for dungeon encounters, group encounters, and even horror, as we're going to get into shortly. Before we get into that though, let's check out the typical encounter that you'd see with a Blight. We see three types of Blights that are in the monster manual, which includes your Needle Blight, Twig Blight, and your Vine Blight. Blights are typically a range of 1/8 to 1/2 CR, making them a relatively simple enemy for low-level players to dispatch if they're on their own. But if they gang up in larger numbers, the challenge rating goes up exponentially, and your players will have one tough encounter ahead of them. The creatures have blind sight and are immune to blindness and deafness. Other than that, they don't have much in the way of defense. Running them in group fights can typically go a little bit longer depending on how many Blights you have in your game. I recommend every time you add a Blight, you double the CR of the first Blight that was there. As a homebrew rule, I like to have Blights regenerate after a certain round limit. That way the players can start deducing what's actually causing the Blights to spawn in the first place and allow them to go deeper into the dungeon to deal with the Golthius tree at hand, or to find something else in the dungeon that's spawning them. Of course, my choice of encounter is usually a horror encounter, non-combative up to a certain point. When it comes to that horror approach, I like to look at previous experiences in games and movies, and my favorite for them is 343 Guilty Spark from the video game Halo Combat Evolved. Halo Combat Evolved is a game that sets you up as a badass, fighting down waves of enemy aliens at a time, to the point where even some of them will run away from you and show just what a powerhouse that you are, up until about the halfway point of the game, when you get to the level 343 Guilty Spark. In this level, you start out in a dank swamp, surrounded by fog, with the only friendly contact that you have being the pilot that dropped you off. As you go through this mission, in the corner of your eye, and as you attempt to look through the distant fog, you can occasionally make out something that looks somewhat human, but not quite. And on your motion tracker, it even shows that they're friendlies. This subversion expectation is what's going to be building the majority of the horror as you step into this alien facility. Once you view the horror that is the Flood, basically alien zombies, all hell breaks loose. And that's the way you want to approach Blights in a horror scenario. These creatures can blend in remarkably well in the environments that they are, be it swamps, forests, deserts, you name it, depending on the type that you're using. Ramping up the visual tension is key here. You want to be able to make sure that your players are rolling high-level perception checks in order to even catch a glimpse of the creatures that are in the distance, or even recognize something that looks vaguely humanoid right next to them. Maybe as they notice that, they have to roll a dexterity too, otherwise they trip on a random twig or vine that's on the ground. Of course, once you get deep enough into this, maybe one of the Vine Blights will speak out in its vampiric tongue. Of course, that's just my approach personally. If you have other approaches that you like to use or are thinking about using, please let me know down below in the comments, and be sure to like this video, and we can continue to make more Monster Monday content. These are one of my favorite monsters to use because I love doing horror, I love doing group encounters, and the playground is just so open with these creatures that you really can't get much better. And don't forget, these three Blights that we talked about are just the three that are in the monster manual. We appreciate you very much for watching. Check us out next week as we go into Will-O-Wisps as well as Gnolls. So stay tuned for that, and we'll see you next time.